So September 5th is based on the true story of the 1972 Olympics terrorist situation in which athletes were taken hostage and the news tried to cover it. Now, this film, this event has been talked about a lot and it's been in films, but this movie is entirely from the perspective of the ABC News crew who were broadcasting the Olympics live. And they were just, the team they had there, they were just there for sports, but once this terrorist story broke out, they scrambled to try to try to act like, they were covering this terrorist event instead of covering the sports. And the thing is, I'm a sucker for these types of films about journalism where they really get into the nuts and bolts of how they cover stories, and this film does that in spades. They have everything that you would want from like a television broadcast journalism perspective from like the 1970s. You hear them talking about the satellite link and how, they can't broadcast everything because they would lose the satellite from time to time. They talk about shooting stuff on video, getting people in the studio, getting the phone hooked up to, to like the broadcast, which required a little bit more technique at the time. They talk about getting like one of the cameras that we're going to have in the newsroom, trying to wheel that out of the studio so that they could get a shot of the hotel where the hostages are being kept, and just developing film as quickly as possible, getting phone calls over the wire on the accurate news to report, and just getting the ABC identity, like the little watermark over like the broadcast. Just all the mechanics there are present, and I love the film mostly on that basis. But there's a lot to love about the dynamic and the technique here, mostly because you got some pretty good performances here. You got Peter Skarsgård playing Rooney Aldridge, who's basically just passing off late night duties over to Joffrey Mason, who's like kind of on the B team. Joffrey is played by John Magaro. And he has to make the tough call about what to do when they hear about the hostages being taken during this event. Because like he initially it feels like it's going to be like a quiet morning. He gets in there and then he starts hearing gunshots, and then like they get news, and he's like, well, what do we do? Do we cover it, or do we cover sports? Because like what they're doing is basically going against more or less what ABC brought them there to do, which was just to cover sports. So trying to cover this event was going to require like a lot of ingenuity and a lot of creativity to try to get this broadcasted, especially since like, this was like a television first. This was like, a live broadcast of a hostage situation, which had never been done before. So this was like untested territory here that was going to be watched by millions of people around the world. And the fact that they were able to pull it off is pretty brilliant. But I love how the film always keeps in perspective that this is a tragedy, and that even though like they're making television history here, there are still like concerns about like the lives of the hostages and debating the merits of what goes on with the television broadcast. Because at one point they bring up how they're live. They have a camera shooting footage of like the hotel window where the hostages are being kept, and they question at one point like, wait, should we be broadcasting this? Won't the terrorists see it? Won't they know about what's going on out there with everything we're filming? And they were like, no, like we're broadcasting to ABC. This is going to go to the US. Nobody in Germany is going to see it. But wait a minute, this is a hotel for the Olympic athletes, and the hotels there, they do have a link to the ABC broadcast, so they would be seeing this. So they kind of like scramble to turn it off, but also debate if what they're doing is just. And this gets challenged by everyone. It gets challenged by ABC. It gets challenged by the German authorities. So they are kind of fighting this uphill battle to try to broadcast this crucial event while still questioning what is the right call. Because there are several moments where Mason is debating what to do, and sometimes he does turn to Rooney, and Rooney is just kind of like, well, it's up to you, or it's in your hands. What's the call? Do we broadcast this? Do we interview this person who's tied to this event? Do we break the news that like the hostages lived or not? Because at one point there's that crucial moment where they're uncertain about what happened when the terrorists and the hostages were brought to a plane, and if and if they made it out alive, because initially there were reports that all the hostages lived, and then it was later revealed, within like a few minutes or so, that no, the hostages didn't all live, and like the terrorists had wiped them all out and nobody lived. And it's one of those things where you kind of like kick yourself over if you don't report on it accurately when time is a factor, but also like accuracy matters most, because when it's reported that, the hostages didn't leave, that they didn't make it out alive, it stings. It stings for everyone in the newsroom, because they feel the weight of the tensions happening here. When this was like a highly political maneuver that was just making tensions rise in Germany, and I think the film doesn't turn away from these politics. It does address them, but it does try to keep in focus that the broadcast matters most, more than not so much more than politics, but in the moment. And this, I think, is perfectly personified through a German translator working for ABC, called Marianne Gebhardt, and she's played by Leonie Benich. And she's basically translating all the German that she's getting coming out of the news and from the authorities, and trying to help out everyone there, while also recognizing the tensions that were going on there and how bad it looks for Germany to be holding these Olympics, and there's a terrorist attack going on there, with especially with like the anti-Semitism that is going on with the hostages that were taken here. And it is an aspect that is addressed, and people do get heated and emotional within the newsroom, but they try to like keep it in check. It's one of those aspects where it does feel believable for a newsroom, where people would be furious and like tensions would rise, and they would like jump to like assumptions and start attacking each other, and like it comes up, but like it's thankfully it's pushed down a bit. And especially with Mary Ann being like a German translator who recognizes why like the German authorities are being very cautious with this material, and also recognizing that anti-Semitism is not Germany, and that's not me, as with like every other like representation that goes on within covering this highly volatile event. So the film, directed by Tim Fehlbaum, does a great job just focusing on the nuts and bolts, and like making it does dramatize parts here and there. Like you do get that moment where someone is just running down the hallways, and they're racing around the clock, and there's lots of like close-ups of get this footage on the air, get it developed really quickly, but it doesn't feel like they're trying too hard to dramatize it. You're always like locked in with the event and covering it, and you're seeing what all the reporters are seeing, and you're seeing all the calls that they're making behind the scenes, listening to like the director's track and what's going on in the control room and what's going on just outside the studio, and just balancing all the duties of everybody here, and just trying to figure out what's going on in the situation, which for an age without the internet, you had to scramble. You had to call everyone. You had to look at the news. You had to, get in witnesses if you could. You had to like really scramble if you wanted to cover a news story like this that very much made history. And it does very much balance that celebratory angle of covering such an event with the darkness that comes along with such a tragedy here. And I know that like for some people, they will be frustrated with the fact that the film doesn't like take a little bit more of a like a more like politically charged stance, just because it feels like it easily could have, like, and I don't quite want to say that it's more like objective, because like I said, it does address the politics and the anti-Semitism and a little bit of like the nationalism that comes with such a tragedy, but the way that I think it balances it out while still trying to be kind of like a true story newsroom drama, I think works so well. So if you like your if you like movies about broadcast journalism that are tight and gripping, and just there are some fantastic performances here, this will very much be your jam. And since I really do love those types of films, especially with movies like Network and broadcast news, September 5th was very much my jam. It's a very tight and engrossing thriller about a real event and how it was broadcast across the world.